It's first undoubted that India is the fastest growing country in the G20. And of course, a lot is made of that. The question is, what do we need to grow at? And is everybody growing, even while India is growing, within India? Poor countries grow very fast. And we are also the poorest country in the G20. So we are in the mode of catch-up growth. A lot of what is contributing to that strong catch-up is the government's sort of emphasis on construction. That's an area that is working. That's also drawing in a lot of steel, a lot of aluminum, and those industries are doing very well. So in that respect, we are getting growth. But if you look at growth of the countries we would like to be like, China, Korea, countries that grew, for a long time at very high rates of growth, at our level of per capita GDP, they were typically 2 or 3 percentage points higher in terms of growth. So yes, we're doing well with respect to the other rich countries, but relative to other countries at our level, we need to grow faster. Why? The Prime Minister has talked about India becoming a developed country by 2047. What does that mean? If you just do the basic math, it means that if you want to get anywhere near 15, 20,000, that's being a very poor advanced country, but 15 to 20,000 per capita income, you need growth rates which are more like 10%, 9, 10% per capita growth rates over a sustained period of time. And, that's tough. In other words, India is doing fine, but we really need to meet a stronger test at this point, which is, can we up our rate of growth, and how do we do it? Now, Subbu gave you a sense of all that is going well. And, he's from the government. I have to...
Not now.
I have to give you the opposite. And let me start by saying, one of the issues he pointed out too is inflation is so contained. I like to think it's contained because of all the work we did in the RBI, creating an inflation targeting regime, etc. But that's not quite the entire story. If we are growing so fast, I think our real growth is about 6.5, not 8.5. 8.5 has some fluff in it, which is the fact that our GDP deflator is 1.5% when actual CPI is 5%. So it's the way we try and calculate GDP. We can have a debate forever on what the right GDP number is, but I do think that there is some fluff in 8.5. But let's say we're growing at 6 to 7, okay? The big question is, why aren't we seeing inflation at this rate of growth? And one is we've got supply and demand exactly balanced. The other is to say, what creates the kind of inflation when you're growing fast? You run out of supply. That is typically labor, and wage rates start going up. If you look at wage rates in India, they're not going up. Look at the place which employs the most people, agriculture. Real agricultural wages have been growing at 1% a year for the last so many years. In other words, there's surplus labor in agriculture. Look at a chart of employment. Where has employment grown in the last few years? 2 places. Not manufacturing, which is the government's emphasis, not services, which was our strength. It's grown in agriculture. For a fast-growing country, for agricultural employment to grow is a travesty. Why do people find jobs in agriculture? It's low productivity. They should be finding jobs elsewhere. The second place is where the government has put a lot of emphasis, which is going well, which is construction. Construction and agriculture are the 2 places which are growing jobs. So another explanation for why we're not getting the kind of inflation that starts showing itself when we're growing so fast. I want to leave out the possibility we're not growing that fast. I think we're growing at 6 to 7%. But the rationale for that comes from the fact that we don't have a lot of employment. That the labor market, unlike this country where unemployment is 3.5%, the labor market is not doing well in India. And that gives you the reason why we have 20 million people applying for 60,000 jobs in government, why every government advertisement attracts so many people, because we're not creating jobs. And that leads to my last point, and as an opener, I'll start. We have to ask why that's not happening. Why are people not getting jobs? And if you look at, take a place which is easy to measure, manufacturing growth. Where is manufacturing growth happening? It's happening in the it's happening in the capital-intensive parts of manufacturing. If you look at labor-intensive parts of manufacturing, in 12 out of 23 sectors that form the IIP, we're actually lower in production than in 2016. A lot of the damage was done during the pandemic. That in the pandemic, you saw a whole bunch of these industries shrink. Why it's not come back is partly a mystery to me, but there is a potential answer, which is that our demand also has not picked up strongly since the pandemic. One version of that is if you look at consumption growth, even in these GDP numbers, which I'm saying we could debate what the true number is, 3% consumption growth. Consumption is not growing strongly. And that is consistent with a middle to lower middle class which is not doing well. What's evidence of that? Look at four-wheeler sales, people like us, what they buy, passenger cars, going through the roof, has gone past the pre-pandemic levels. Look at two-wheeler sales. Two-wheelers are what the middle class drives. They have been growing really slowly for the last decade, but particularly they went up before the pandemic. They haven't reached their pre-pandemic levels. That's suggestive that there is a large part. So put all these together. Not enough employment, okay? The fact that we have consumption growth relatively low. The fact that where most people, Indians, earn their living, agriculture, wages aren't going up. All this suggests an economy which is two-faced. One is the face we all see, which we talk about in these conferences. Fantastic, India is China +1, Apple is creating factories in India, that's all wonderful. The other face is there's a hurting middle and lower middle class, which is desperate for work, which is not getting that work. When does that side come to bite the first side? It comes from demand.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.